Alright guys, so let's get started with defining models using loopback. So if we stop for a moment to think about what our API is going to be used for, we can have a better idea of what kind of models we'll need and what kind of fields those models will need. So if you're thinking about it in a MySQL type of format where you can visualize the tables and the columns, that's what I'm referring to here. So let's assume for right now that this API is going to be used for a social networking platform. This will be the API for our network. We're going to need to manage users, which means logging in, logging out, and access tokens, and that's something that by default is already built into Loopback. Now let's also think about the profile information. So these are going to be detached from the user object itself, but every user object is going to have a profile. And so the profile itself is going to be a related model to the user object. Now, with all the conceptual stuff out of the way, let's clear our terminal here. And what I'm going to do is run a command that is going to ask us certain information about the model that we want to create. So let's go ahead and run the command now, which is lb space model. It would help if I could spell that. There we go. lb space model. Optionally, you can add the name of your model here as, like, if I was going to have a profile, you could add it right there and it will skip the first question. If you don't add the model's name to the command itself, it's going to ask you what would you like to call the model. And so that's the way that we're going to do it here. So the name of our model is going to be profile. And the second question is about where to store it. So if you have multiple databases as data sources here, this is where you would see a list of them. For right now, we only have memory, so it's going to be stored in memory, which means when we restart the application, it's going to basically not persist any of the information that we've saved during the session. So we are going to have to change the data source later, so I'll show you how to do that as well. So in DB, memory is where we're going to store it. And here we have the ability to subclass existing models. We're just going to stick with persisted model for most of actually everything we develop. This is going to be what we're going to choose. We're going to just hit enter here. We're going to expose profile models to the API, which means we'll have all the automatically created endpoints that we're able to access over the REST API. Now, when this wouldn't make sense is if you wanted a strictly internal model that was not exposed via the REST API. So let's say we wanted to have something that only the server could be aware of, really. We would just have selected no to not expose the model to the REST API. So for custom plural form used for the REST URLs, we're going to just we'll just hit enter. It's going to automatically generate plurals for that. And I'll show you what that means here in a moment once we actually get the model built. It's going to ask now if it's going to be a common or server only. So for the most part, we're going to select common. And now we can start adding properties. So if we think about the specific example that we're using here, we're going to need some properties about the person. So picture a social network profile, all of the fields that are displayed to other users on a page. So there needs to be a name, maybe a website link to their website. And we'll cover images later, so we will not worry about that too much right now. So let's just go ahead and write first name and hit enter. The property type is going to be one of these, and you can select them here when you add new fields to the model. So we're going to select string. Required, you can choose yes or no. Let's just hit enter here. Default value, let's leave it blank. And now we can add another field. So last name would be appropriate to add here. It's going to be a string. It's not required. We're going to not assign a default value. Let's go ahead and also add created at. This is going to be camel case. Actually, to follow consistency here with my previous methods, let's make it snake case, which means everything's lowercase and words are separated by underscores. Now, the type here is going to be date. And the default value, let's just leave that blank for now. We'll talk more about default date values at a later point in time. And then let's have one more property, and let's go with age. And age is going to be a number. It's not required, and default value is blank. Now we're done adding fields to the model, and it's still asking for one. So let's just hit enter, and it's going to just quit out of this. Now, we've got our model created, so if we go into our website backend directory now, we're going to see a common directory, as well as model config has changed. So if we open this up, we can see our new model here has automatically been added through the use of that command line utility. Now, if we drop down common and models, inside of here we have profile.js and profile.json. Now, the .js file is going to be used only to add custom endpoints for this model, and we'll go through that after. For right now, let's just open up profile.json to see what's kind of been generated for us. So we can see the name, the base, and instead of using the command line utility, you could totally write all of this by yourself. And chances are, after you create models, later on you might realize, hey, I need to add a new field or something. And so this is where you would do that. Under properties, let's say now we want to add a birth date field. And so what we're going to do is write birth underscore date. And then you're going to open up a new object, and type is going to be one of the types that we could select. One of the types that we could select during the model creation. So in this case, it's going to be date. And then we need to make sure to add a comma here. Now, something interesting is if we wanted to have an array of objects stored, so let's say activity. Every time they do something in the app, we're going to store that kind of as a history. So actually, yeah, that's the perfect name for it. So let's go ahead and add a field called history. And now the type is going to be a little bit different. Instead of writing array or anything, we're going to open up two square brackets, and we're going to pass a string. So in this instance, by using these square brackets, it knows that we want to have an array of something. It could be an array of strings, an array of numbers, and for this instance, it's going to be an array of objects. And we're going to save this. Now, just to take a quick look at the profile.js, we are going to write methods in here like profile dot and then whatever we want to call it. And we'll get more into that. Just this is what this looks like here. Don't worry about this for now. So now we've got our profile model created, and as you're moving through with Loopback, creating models is incredibly quick. And the cool thing is that now once we've got this created, we can run npm start, and I'm not sure if it will open up our browser, so I'm just going to refresh here. And we'll have to wait a moment. There, it's running now, so I'm going to jump into the Explorer. And the persisted model being used as a base class has given all of these automatically created routes. So we can see that we can get a count of different instances of this model. So if there were 5 different profiles for 5 different users, we could see them here. You get delete routes, patch, post, put, get. You get all of these routes. And the great thing kind of is that here we can see that we can access a specific one by profiles / and then the ID of it. Now, additionally, we could find one. So if we only wanted to get one of them, let's say we could do it this way, get profiles / ID, but let's say we don't have the ID, we only have maybe the user ID. So we could come in to find one and use the filter here to find one that fits a certain clause, like a certain condition. So if you have any experience with MySQL, picture this as the where filter. In MySQL, you can select all from a certain table where, and then you can start saying like where ID equals this, or where first name equals this. And so that's what the filter parameter for all of these routes are. And we'll be covering that a little more once we get more into it. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.